Romans 12:12 tells us to rejoice in hope, to be patient in tribulation, and to be constant in prayer. It's hard to believe that it's been a year since our last Pure Joy meeting. A year. My name is Cristy, and today marks the 1-year anniversary of my mother's funeral. Last year, on Easter Sunday, the Lord called my mother home. She is now cancer-free. The day after my mom's funeral, my sister and I attended Pure Joy. When we entered the theater, we had heavy hearts, but we were anticipating what God was going to do that night. As my sister and I took our seats, we looked down at the stage, and against the black backdrop were huge gold letters that spelled out the word joy. My sister and I turned to one another, and we just smiled and said Mama, because that was our mother's middle name. And at that moment, it was like God said that He understood our pain and our suffering and our loss, and He was there, and we weren't alone. God is definitely in the details. We later learned that those balloons had been prayed over before they were placed on stage, and even though it was something tiny, it spoke to me, and much healing took place. Though I missed my mom, I knew where she was. But my son Court, on the other hand, that was a different story. He had abandoned God in his childhood faith, and he had distanced himself from the family.
Satan definitely had control of my life. I took a long, dark journey.
He was involved with drug and alcohol abuse, and we'd go for weeks and months of not knowing where he was and not knowing if he was okay. And it was just a very difficult time in our life. It really affected our relationship in the sense that as a mom, you want to protect your kids, and I couldn't protect Court, and I wasn't the one in control, and God laid that on my heart. He said, are you in control, or am I the one in control? And I had to really fully trust in the Lord. And our joy shouldn't be determined by our circumstances. But I had gotten to a place where I had lost my joy. My mom had always been a prayer warrior. She had always stood in the gap for her family. And now it was time for me to follow in her footsteps. I knew the power of prayer. So my husband and I contacted our family and our closest friends and asked them to help us lift Court up in prayer. While we had been praying, the sense of urgency became overwhelming. We knew that Court was at a crossroads in his life. Then we got the call. It was Court asking if we could pick him up. It had been a while since I had seen him. It was so painful to see him. He was so thin, and he was exhausted, and he was just a hollow shell of himself, because he was so full of life, and he was just physically strong, and he always had a sense of joy about him. And the drugs and alcohol had taken that from him.
I thought drugs and alcohol was what I needed to be happy, but that wasn't happiness.
We just embraced, and I just had an overwhelming feeling of thankfulness that he had returned home. And later, in talking with Court, we learned that night that we had been praying so desperately for him, and we had the urgency. He had gone to a party like he had many times before. But while he was at that party, he said it was like no party he'd been to before. And he said that he felt the Lord speak to him. He said he heard a voice just tell him that he shouldn't be there. And it was impressed upon him that he needed to leave. And he left the party. He walked away.
My mom, my family were all praying for me, and I could feel it. I really could feel it.
I told Court, Court, we've been praying for you. Your family and your friends have been lifting you up in prayer. And he said, I know you have, Mom. I felt it.
I just want to tell you how thankful I am for my mom, my family, and all my friends. It's just a long, dark path that no one needs to take. And I couldn't imagine how they were feeling on the other side. But I'm just happy that I had a family that did believe in God, that did stand in the gap for me in prayer. If I didn't have that, I really don't know if I'd be where I'm at right now. And I'm so thankful for that. I love you.